Hi, this is Jaya. In this video, we shall see the summary of The Other Boat by E.M. Forster. The story begins with a boat which is traveling from India to England. A group of children are playing on the deck of the boat. Lionel, who is one of the child, is attempting to get his friend Coconut to play battle with him. Lionel is also one among the 5 children belonging to Mrs. March, and he is here because his father had deserted his mother for a native he had met while fighting in a war abroad. Now, Mrs. March actually disapproves Coconut because she feels he is having a touch of the tar brush, or he does not be entirely belonging to the European ancestry. She tells the other boys not to play in the direct sunlight so that they can avoid being afflicted with sunstroke. Baby, the youngest of the children, begins to cry, so she picks him up to carry him inside. Before she can get inside, a young sailor hops out of his cabin and draws a white line around her, which makes her to put in a state of mind where she cannot escape the circle that surrounds her. At that time, Coconut appears screaming that she has been caught. She gets angry with Coconut and tells him he is a silly, idle, useless, unmanly little boy. Years later, now Lionel has become a captain in the British Army and is known as a war hero after he was injured in a battle. He has now grown into a handsome young man with blonde hair, blue eyes, and broad shoulders. Lionel is aboard a ship to India where he is supposed to meet up with Isabel, whom he is to marry. After boarding the ship, he is informed that Coconut is also abroad and he has made arrangements for them to share a room together. Lionel is rather shocked and quite uncertain about sharing his room with a half caste. But because the ship is already full, and because his prejudices are not personal, he agrees to share the room with Coconut. At first, things seem normal. They talk about old times, joking with each other. And suddenly, as Lionel was sitting on his top bunk, Coconut grabbed his leg and began feeling up until he had reached his groin. Lionel is confused and disgusted and runs out. He looks out for the master at arms, but he is not there. He then heads to the pursuer's office demanding that he have his room switched without giving any reason. When the pursuer explains that all of the rooms are already full, Lionel furiously marches out of the office. While he is at the front of the ship, he meets Captain Arbuthnot and his wife, and they form a group known as the Big Eight. After a few drinks and jokes, Lionel complains about having to room with a wog. Lionel decides to deal with Coconut and tries to forget about the incident that had happened. Now, everything seemed to be going well, but Lionel cannot help but think back on the night when Coconut had made his move and even wonders what would have happened if he had granted Coconut's desires. The ship enters the Mediterranean Sea, and one night, after Lionel returns to his cabin, Coconut waits with a bottle of champagne. After a few drinks, Lionel gave in to Coconut's seduction, and as they lay in bed together, they talked about their lives. At one point, Coconut questions the large scar that Lionel has on his groin area. Lionel says that the scar was his battle wound, which is what ended up making him a war hero. Lionel continues talking deeply about his personal stories from his younger days. Coconut, however, does not say much about his past. He says he is in charge of some business and he also has several passports from different countries, which makes us really wonder who Coconut really is. The two men now have become close with one another, not only on a physical level but on an emotional level as well. Lionel says, I am fonder of you than I know how to say. Coconut says that Lionel should have someone to take care of him, but Lionel realizes that it would be impossible for him to have Coconut with him all the time. Suddenly, Lionel notices the bolt on the door had been unlocked. He blames himself for being too careless. Coconut claims that it was his fault also because he knew that the door was unlocked. Furious with Coconut, Lionel decides to go out on the deck for a smoke. Realizing the seriousness, Coconut says to Lionel, "When you come back, you will not be you, and I may not be I." Out on the deck, Lionel sees Colonel Arbeth not sleeping next to his wife. He thinks about everything which he would lose if anyone were to find out about the scandal with Coconut. He was the firstborn and had to maintain the integrity of his family name. And thinking of Isabel, who is waiting for him in India, he decides what happened would not follow him. Hearing Lionel, Colonel Arbuthnot wakes up and apologizes to Lionel for having to bunk with the oak. And he says that they had just discovered that Coconut was not supposed to be on the boat at all, but he had given fat bribes to get himself aboard the ship. After his discussion with the colonel, Lionel leaves the deck. Returning to the cabin, Lionel sees Coconut in his top bunk. Getting close to Lionel, Coconut insists that he kiss him. When Lionel rejects him, Coconut decides to go in for the kiss regardless and bites Lionel's forearm. Lionel flashes back to the war and strangles Coconut. Then he kisses his eyelids tenderly and commits suicide by throwing himself into the ocean. His body is never found. The story ends here. It's a beautiful story by E.M. Forster. If you have anything more to add on to what I've said, please write it in the comment box. Like the video, share it with your friends, and if you have not subscribed my channel, please subscribe. Thank you.